Thanks very much, Don. From now on, you'll get it right. I'm going to start with an interactive question because I'm going to talk about opportunities in nuclear and specifically opportunities for companies that want to grow their nuclear business or companies that are in advanced manufacturing that are looking at that big fancy building along the 401, wondering what's going on. That's the Darlington Energy Complex. Reading about the $20 billion investment in nuclear. How many people here represent small companies in the energy or in the manufacturing sector that have an interest in getting into the nuclear business? Okay. Well, that's unfortunate because my talk was going to be about the opportunities in the nuclear sector and what you and we can do together to help you get into that business. So I'm going to rely on the fact that each of you probably knows somebody in another company that might want to get into the nuclear business. So I'm not going to take this as a negative. But let me first of all just tell you a little bit about OCI. We are an industry trade association. And we do three things. We help our companies, all 190 of them. We support them in offshore markets, and that was a big theme of the conference this morning, some of the talks about export markets. We lobby, but we also help members connect with one another. And so if there were small companies here today, what I would say is you need to connect with the larger companies, the larger tier ones. Those are the ones that have the big contracts on refurbishment at Darlington and Bruce, and they're looking to build their supply chain. And obviously, a local supply chain has the advantage of proximity, the cluster idea that they can come and see you easily, and so forth. So there's a lot going on in the sector domestically. Darlington and Bruce have another 10 reactors that have to be refurbished, life extended for another 30 years. That's going to take $20 billion. I'm sure some of you would like that to be spent here in Durham region, and in particular with the companies that you represent or in whom you have friends. But the big companies are consolidating their supply chains. So there's not much point if you're a small company and calling someone at Bruce and Darlington and saying you want to work for them. You got to find your partner. So take an example of Darlington project. There's 7 big bundles. And each of the big project bundles is managed by one large engineering, procure, construct contractor. Those are the people you've got to connect with. And what we do is we help those smaller companies make those connections. The export market is also very exciting, perhaps even more exciting. So when Don introduced me, he said I joined the organization of Can-Do Industries in 2011. That's what we were called then. We changed our name since then, in December of 2012, to the Organization of Canadian Nuclear Industries. The reason for that is, in offshore markets that perhaps don't operate CANDU reactors, they don't want us labeled as a supplier of a particular type. So we call ourselves now CANDU and more. We support the CANDU industry and CANDU markets. When I go to markets like the UK, or USA, where they don't at the moment have CANDU reactors, the Canadian flag flies better. So what we've done to support export markets is identified a number of key markets, and you can see them on the slide behind me. And the UAE is interesting. You said, why is there a question mark there? Well, there happen to be a good number of expats from the Canadian nuclear industry that have key roles in the United Emirates building 2 large Korean reactors, and we expect there'll be another 2 more. They want to bring the Canadian supply chain into the United Emirates. You don't need road salt in the United Emirates, just like you don't need road salt in the Carolinas. Jim was chuckling in the last speaker. He talked about all the salt that had to come into Ontario, and Jim only uses salt for food. He doesn't know what a bag of salt is that you throw it on the road. I mentioned earlier this morning that we get great support from the feds in terms of what we do. This past year, Aaron O'Toole had the pleasure of calling me to tell me that I'd won another $90,000 for OCI, and we did a little press conference out here in Durham back in July to help, and we use that money, of course, to leverage our resources and take our companies offshore. So leverage is key for an organization that has modest means and who wants to spend its money wisely. So how do we use that money? So the first thing we do, of course, you've got to know something about the market you're going into. So to that end, we commission with co-funding from the GOA program market studies. In the last year, we've done studies in the UK, India, China, and just this past week I awarded a contract to a company. MZC is a Canadian consulting company, actually a member of OCI, but they have a Korean partner, GNEST, and they're going to help us evaluate the Korean market in preparation for a trade mission there early in the new year. It's also important that we retain that political support for nuclear. The province has been very good in the long-term energy plan of stating that they will support the Canadian supply chain and offshore markets. And in fact, they've been on a couple of trade missions with us. To solidify that support, Marina and I, in collaboration with a couple of the unions, organized a very successful Queen's Park nuclear reception. And there you see the photograph. There's our energy minister in the middle, a couple of good-looking guys on either end of that platform. Unfortunately, it was October the 27th. I think many of you were probably voting that night, so unfortunately, people like Adrian Foster and others couldn't get to our reception. So that was probably unfortunate timing, but it was a great event. So trade missions, we started modestly. We took 6 companies to Argentina in December of 2012. Then we went to the UK in March 2013 with 10 nuclear companies. That trade mission was done through the Ministry of Economic Development, Trade and Trade. India was our biggest one. Federal Minister Lynn Yelich was on that trade mission. We took 12 companies along, and we also had support of the regulator and the research laboratory, AECL. And that brings strength. It shows that we are an integrated, cohesive industry with strong regulation, R&D and development, plus strong companies. And then our biggest one yet was in China of April 2012. Marina and I had a wonderful time there. I learned how to do gambay. If any of you have been to, Kathy must know this. You know what gambay means, Kathy? Boy, oh boy, if you got to, every time that you're having a dinner at a round table, someone will come across the table, gambay, which means bottom up, and you've got to look your colleague in the eye and drink it down, and that happens all evening long. It takes a lot of training to get good for that. So in April, Minister Reza Moridi was on our trade mission, and that gave us that kind of credibility that we needed at the government level. Plus, our 2 utilities joined the trade mission. Donna is here representing Ontario Power Generation. We had a representation from Canadian Nuclear Partners on that trade mission, as well as a couple of gentlemen from Bruce. So you can see we're building this strong energy nuclear cluster as we go offshore. We had the trade mission in Paris this October. Just to show you what kind of people, Marina and I, we decided we didn't want to go to Paris in October. So in fact, we recruited 2 board members to go on our behalf to Paris in October, and they did a good job. We were just down in Westinghouse in Cranberry, Pennsylvania, just a week ago. Took 35 companies to show that large integrated nuclear vendor, the kind of capability that we have here in Canada. And we've got planned trade missions, Romania in March of this coming year, and then Korea in April. And I learned just the other day that Trade Minister Ed Fast is leading a Canadian trade mission to Korea in February. So we've got to see how we can manage to build those 2 events into a stronger Canadian presence in Korea. Kathy in her presentation, talked about the alliances that she builds in foreign markets. So when we were in China, we signed an MOU with the Haiyan Nuclear Industry Alliance. Now that's an organization of companies, much like Jim's in the Carolinas, of about 70 companies in Haiyan region that want to grow their nuclear industry. They want to attract investment into Haiyan. And Haiyan happens to be that part of China where we currently have 2 CANDU reactors. They're actually coming to visit us on December the 5th, and we're going to go up to have a tour of UIT. Roger Anderson, hopefully, and Adrian Foster will have a chance to meet the Haiyan people. So that's a nice partnership, and there you see myself and the head of the Haiyan Alliance signing the MOU, and between them in the back is Minister Reza Moridi. This summer in Vancouver, at the Pacific Basin Nuclear Conference, we signed an MOU with a similar organization in Korea that's called the Korea Nuclear Industrial Forum. And so we signed the MOU, which is a bridge to building the partnerships and helping us identify Korean companies with whom to partner. So I want to quickly talk about supply chain development, and there are 2 jurisdictions that I've been inspired by, and you heard from Jim Little this morning, but there's another organization in the UK that have formed an organization called the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre near Sheffield. And I've been in touch with those people. We visited them on the UK trade mission. That's what they do. They help UK companies acquire the skills, the manufacturing skills, the business skills, the total skill set you need to grow into and help them qualify to become nuclear suppliers. It's actually part of a larger advanced manufacturing park, AMP, and that's a schematic. So they have companies there that, or organizations that focus on other areas like automotive and aerospace and other advanced manufacturing sectors. So it's a good model, and I think Durham is well poised, along with UIT, to form that kind of partnership. And Jim talked about it this morning, and hopefully in the Q&A or when Jim talks, he can go on it further. So I see three areas of opportunities for Durham. Policy. The nuclear leaders in Canada have decided that they want to rejuvenate the view that Canada should be a Tier 1 nuclear nation. Tier 1 nation, nuclear nation is one that has leadership in not only nuclear operations, but nuclear design and vending. Okay, all right, I won't look back. And with strong regulatory environment as well. So we want to use that team of energetic leaders to help form the policy that says we want to be a better jurisdiction. In August of this year, the Ontario government announced the Better Business Climate Act under Brad Duguid's leadership. And that's to help create and identify and then create competitive business clusters in the province of Ontario. And I've offered nuclear as a model of that. And just yesterday afternoon, Jim and I had a meeting with some Ontario government people in Brad's ministry to talk about what we can do, what we can learn from that great model in the Carolinas. I think the workforce and leadership is probably the low-hanging fruit that's best to be grabbed right here in Durham. You've got a great university in UOIT, and you've got a great industry. So you've got a utility with 10 operating nuclear reactors right now. You've got a great university, and you've got a core of some good nuclear companies. Again, we can look at the model of the Carolinas, in particular the EPIC Center at University of North Carolina. And then also in supply chain development and research. That's where the model in the UK fits. I think we can expand manufacturing R&D at Durham College and UIT. And the two excellent models there, again, are the EPIC Center at University of North Carolina and the Advanced Manufacturing Research Park in North Carolina. So I think there are some exciting things here in Durham. I look forward to an interactive discussion when we get to that part of the panel. Thank you very much.